Welcome to the Financial Sense series. I am your host, Judy McCutcheon. I am an experienced educator, financial educator, coach, and creator of the Own Your Badass coaching program. I created the 30-day money mindset detox program, which aims to help you take control of your finances and have a better relationship with your money. I am passionate about helping women build wealth from the inside out. And I have some exciting things on for 2021, one of which is the money mindset detox mini course, which comes up in January. This mini course is to help you kickstart your 2021 money journey. So I invite you to join our wait list to be notified when registration is open. In this 10-part series, we will be talking about all things personal finance. We will discuss your money personality, your money beliefs, your money values, savings, debt, insurance, budgeting, retirement, investment, and everything in between. Money is such a powerful word that even the mere mention of it can arouse extreme emotions. Money is central to everything we do. It helps to turn our dreams into reality and gives us the freedom to live life on our terms. Yes, yet the startling reality is that most of us never formally learn about money. Personal finance is not a subject taught in schools or colleges. A recent survey shows that 77% of people are stressed about money. In fact, the American Psychological Association cites money as the number one stressor in people's lives. It has also been um, cited as the number one destroyer of personal relationships. Today, we are joined by three guests who will help us take a look at our personal finances in 2021 to see what our um, personal finance outlook would look like. We have with us Miss Gayle Marshall, and Gayle is a risk professional and she currently works in the field of risk analytics in Barbados. She holds degrees in the field of economics, mathematics, and risk management. She has also worked in the insurance as well as in the financial services industry, dealing with capital markets investment. Welcome, Gail.
Hi, nice to be here. Thank you so much, Judy.
All right. Then we have Dwaine Forbes. It's the first time that we have a man joining us for the show. So welcome, Dwaine.
Yeah.
Dwaine is the CEO of ROIC Limited in Jamaica. It's a consulting firm that specializes in accounting, strategy, and project evaluation. He is a certified financial education instructor as well as a personal financial coach, and he manages the financial rehab program at his company. Thank you for joining us today, Dwayne, and
Thank you very much,
you're
Judy, and
first,
I'm privileged to be the
yes, the
first name.
first guy.
Yes.
And then we have Miss Jennifer Robertson. Jennifer is a career banker of more than 25 years. Presently, she is the executive manager of risk at Grenada Cooperative Bank here in Grenada. She has extensive knowledge and experience in banking, retail sales and services, commercial and mortgage lending, credit risk, and lending. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you, Judy, and thank you for having me on the show.
Great. Thank you and welcome for being here as we continue this money discussion. This is our fourth episode of the show. So thank you so much for joining us. And the idea behind these talks is to help educate and to get us to start talking openly about money because money is taboo. in a lot of societies. People don't talk about money. So I want to get us start talking openly about money so that people can start having a better relationship with their finances. And when we have a better relationship with our finances, then we are able to develop a good roadmap for our future. Um, and we can all agree that 2020 has been that year. It has been disorienting, disruptive, and dizzying in a lot of ways for a lot of people. So many people have lost jobs. The tourism and the airline industry, especially, have been severely hit. And so, in today's discussion, I want us to it's centered more around the uncertainty of 2021 because we have no idea what can happen. And just chat a little bit about what people's people can expect from a personal financial standpoint in 2021. um I believe that we have to be realistic in creating a financial game plan for 2021, right? In our second episode of this show, we discuss financial planning and the elements of a financial plan. So this show will kind of just build on that in a little bit. But in all of this, in all the financial education and training and talks, and the one thing that always come up is mindset and a mindset change as it relates to how you deal with money, right? We have been told you should save 10% of your expenses, right? But there are a lot of people who can't do that, especially at a time like now. So if you can't if you can't, do you just forego savings altogether? Because I think these are some of the questions that are going on in people's mind. Like, I don't have this money, what am I supposed to do? So let's just get right into the discussion. So after 2020, um you know many people, and I believe many people in the Caribbean, may not be very optimistic about the outlook for 2021. Plus, the other thing is that many people took the situation for granted and didn't know how long it would last. Because we 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 like to say that we're on island time and things go over and it's not going to last for a long time and all of that. But here we are at the start of 2021, and countries are still on lockdown, and some getting ready to go into lockdown or curfew, as the case may be. Now, most of our economies are dependent on tourism, and with all these travel restrictions, we just don't know how 2021 is going to play out. What do you think we can realistically expect of Caribbean economies in 2021? And I'm going to start with Gail.
Honestly, I think it's going to be very difficult for the most of the islands in the Caribbean, if not all of them. As you would have mentioned, the islands are usually very dependent on tourism for most of them, and based on the COVID situation, the lockdowns, countries not being able to travel, the airlines having challenges, and so on, that would have been a major impact. In addition, you would have also had some of the other countries that might also deal in trade, for example, oil and so on, where they would have also had challenges coming out of the same COVID. So I actually think that it will be a bit of a challenge for the Caribbean economies going forward. And they're probably going to see a lot of that impact starting from this year.
So, you know, building on what Gail just said, because yes, we depend on tourism, and some of our countries depend on oil and so on. Dwaine, from your perspective, because you work with companies, you have worked with the Jamaica Stock Exchange. What do you think from your perspective?
Well, thank you very much, Judy. Well, from my perspective, I would say firstly, in 2019, it showed that the Caribbean region was somewhat into a recessionary mode because between 2014 and 2019, the region economy performed at about 0.3%. So that within itself was very weak. And then COVID-19, brought on a lot of strain and stress on the economy. So all the economies in the Caribbean region, especially for English speaking, uh, declined significantly, I guess, except Guyana. Guyana was the only one who still performed positively. So overall, given those contractions, given the weak fundamentals prior to the recessionary period or COVID-19 pandemic, I think it will be a challenging time, generally speaking, for companies. And what I think also makes it more challenging is the fact that many institutions, many organizations are not making the transition easily to the digital era. So tourism still dependent on tourism, still dependent on the traditional industries. And we're not making that transition as fast as it could have been if you were more prepared. So it should be more difficult going forward.
So, from a banking perspective, because I kind of want us to look at this in a holistic way. From a banking perspective, Jennifer, what do you think we can look forward to?
For 2021, Judy, I think persons really do have to manage their expectations. From a banking perspective, we expect nothing too significantly optimistic or different in terms of performance from 2020. In fact, 2021 into 2022, we predict to be quite challenging years because remember, in 2020, with the onset of COVID, the banking sector and regulators would have allowed banks to issue forbearance and moratoriums to customers. So we have not begun to feel the brunt of COVID-19 within the sector just yet because you have clients and corporates who are allowed forbearance during this time. In 2021 into 2022, that is when we foresee that we will start seeing some of the distress that persons are already thinking and forecasting would come. In terms of real growth, as Dwaine said, as Gayle said, economic growth, let's not be overly optimistic. All projections suggest that, especially even in the ECCU, growth will be negative. So despite talk of a vaccine, despite there has been managed reopening of our borders, etc., there is still a lot of uncertainty. And as such, I don't foresee from a banking standpoint that there would be that kind of aggression that we saw in the market in 2018, 2017, even into 2019 ahead of COVID.
And so now I want to build on that and bring you back, Jennifer, because I was just about to talk about the moratorium that banks gave in 20 in early 2020, and that was only for a short time. And I'm really hoping that people would have used that money wisely, at least save it for when the moratorium is up, right? But people continue to lose their jobs, and in the sectors like we say that are most affected, tourism and the airline industry. Do you anticipate? Do you think that we will see a lot of foreclosures in 2021? And if there is that on the horizon, what can people do to mitigate or to avoid some of these foreclosures?
Okay, so let me speak to Grenada's situation, and I would say the ECCU, and it would be useful maybe to hear Gayle and Dwaine's perspective for Barbados and also the Northern Caribbean. But in 2021, Judy, realistically, we do not foresee many foreclosures. Again, the forbearance that clients can avail themselves of, it is available into 2021. Now, the terms and the conditions under which clients and businesses were able to obtain a moratorium in 2020, there may be certain adjustments being made. But realistically, into 2021, it is not the expectation that you would see a lot of foreclosures on the market. Learning from the crisis of 2008 and what we experienced in the Caribbean, in Grenada, in terms of the high level of delinquent loans, in terms of high levels of foreclosure, we do not want to have a repeat of that. And we do have our regulator support to work with our clients as best as we can, to repackage their loans as best as they can. The issue here now really is how can we help our customers, especially those businesses that were most affected. You're talking about persons in the tourism sector, persons in the hospitality sector, even persons in certain distributive trade sectors. And so the aim really, it is not to demand monies of clients and to sell, but rather how can we help you survive this period? Because remember, the reality is that this is a pandemic risk we're dealing with. This is not a systemic financial risk that is contained to the financial sector. COVID has impacted every aspect of life, every single risk category that you can think about. And so it is something much bigger that has to be carefully managed. And so from a banking sector perspective, I would say to persons, yes, you may see distressed assets being put up for sale, but do not expect to see a surge in foreclosures in 2021, because that is certainly not the objective from where we sit in terms of how we treat with clients during this period.
All right. Dwaine, what do you think um, from Jamaica's perspective?
Okay, I think generally speaking, there should, well, we can't, first and foremost, we can't accurately predict, because a number of variables, but just looking at some practice would say that one, the banks have a vested interest in ensuring that, they don't have an expanded loan default portfolio. So they have an interest, and given the case, as Jennifer alluded to, it's a pandemic. So I know they have been managing those with the moratoriums. They have been looking at revising those. And I know also that in Jamaica's context, would say approximately 60% of the mortgages benefit through the National Housing Trust, which I know as an institution, as a government institution, they may be able to provide some amount of flexibility in looking at the terms and conditions to just help persons to survive during this period. However, looking at those, I think the bigger concern for me, which none of us have control over, is that will the economy be rebounding within another 6 months or so? Or if there are external shocks, for example, an hurricane, or if there's additional mutation to a new strain of the virus, and then it prolong the recovery period, then those factors and other unknowns may force that number up, because a part of the issue is even prior to the COVID pandemic, many other countries, the debt to GDP was going down. But in order for the governments to provide support to the stressed economy, with subsidies during the period of time, you recognize that debt to GDP ratio has been going up, and it simply means that that is not sustainable. So the longer the pandemic runs, then the greater the challenge that and risk of increased foreclosure. So we have to just really, try and manage all these variables. But as it is now, I don't foresee that there will be a significant spike. But that is only if the assumptions hold true that we'll start seeing some recovery, that the distribution of vaccine will take place. It will happen in a very efficient way in the Caribbean context, which we know we have infrastructure, institutional challenges. If really those work, then we are anticipating that we should see a real modest number. But if those assumptions go opposite to what we anticipate, then it may be higher than usual.
Gail, your Prime Minister PM Motley has been out front, and I mean, we all in the Caribbean take her as our Prime Minister because she's really been proactive. How do you see this playing out in Barbados?
Well, as it relates to the foreclosures, I don't necessarily think that it's going to cause a spike. I believe, similar to what Jennifer would have said, that we will more or less see a greater focus with banks and credit unions and other financiers, more or less trying to be a bit more flexible and working with the customers. Part of that, as would have been mentioned earlier, would be the situation that more or less this is something that would have affected everybody, but also because this also put financial pressure on the banks, who would have to more or less be responsible for maintaining the properties and so on while they're being foreclosed upon before they're waiting to be sold. And that also puts additional financial pressure on the banks, even given the additional pressure that they will be experiencing right now. But by being more flexible and more or less looking to repackage the loans, maybe offering some sort of assistance if needed, maybe restructuring if they need to extend the loans a bit more, change the payments to more suit the situation that people are in, that might actually be the first option for banks, especially if you look longer term, because these are also people that you're going to want to come into your bank and provide more services once the jobs start back and the economy actually becomes more engaged again following the COVID. Once the vaccine comes back, the business starts being rebuilt and so on. So that is actually a better way to approach it. However, as it relates to if there's anything that can be done, maybe this is something that might not be able to be done now, given the current financial situation a lot of people are dealing with. But going forward, I guess once the economy stabilizes itself and so on, people might actually need to be a bit more practical in terms of when they own houses, when they own properties and so forth. A lot of people don't understand, for example, that when you purchase insurance for a house, that you really truly should put aside money for a deductible, because in the event that something happens, especially if there's a hurricane that has a deductible, that, you might need to have that money put down. You might need to have money put aside for repairs and that kind of situation, which makes things difficult. Another thing that I would have noticed during the COVID situation, you would have mentioned the moratorium that was offered by banks and so on, is that it seemed as though some people didn't necessarily even understand exactly what a moratorium was. So some people might have actually thought that the moratorium was actually that you didn't have to pay at all, not that the money would have to be paid later. And that also might provide a greater challenge for people in that they know how to look for the money after the time spent. So maybe a greater understanding of these things may also be beneficial going forward in terms of dealing with the economic situation and avoiding extreme situations such as foreclosures in the future.
I like what you said about repackaging the loan, because then it means that banks now have to be creative, because if you foreclose, who are you going to get to sell those properties to? So it's easier, it's better if you work with that current customer and get them past this point, and then until they're back on their feet. That's actually quite great. And more education, because people really don't understand, like Gail said, what a moratorium is. So you tell me I have a loan, I think you tell me I have a moratorium, and one thing we know is that we ain't going and read. So I just think, well, okay, wow, my loan done, and I just continue my life, not thinking that 3 months down the road I still have to pay, but it sends my my payment longer. So people are really looking at all of that. Now, I teach a course on financial wellness, and so many people tell me that their salaries don't allow them to live and save at the same time. I mean, I hear that all the time. I'm sure Dwayne, you hear the same thing a lot too. Many people's salaries now are still below pre-COVID levels. And I'm sure that there are many people who have not even glanced at the bank statement, because we like to avoid. We think all of this thing is complicated, so we don't want to look at it because we really don't want to have to face the fact that we have debt and we have this debt to pay. So that's why credit cards go out of whack, right? Um, so my question in this is twofold, right? Pre-COVID, do you think that people were generally living above their means, or that the situation is as bad as they say it is? And the second part is, do you think that at a time like this, people will now be forced to adjust their mindset to deal with what lies ahead? And I'm going to start with Dwayne, because Dwayne and I have the same um, certification. So I want to hear what people have been saying to him in terms of the salary and savings and stuff like that.
Right. It remains a major problem for persons who, kept saying, well, that not earning enough, it's very hard to save. The truth is, Judy, unlike my colleagues who emerged out of the financial system for many years, my passion for personal finance came out of my personal financial crisis, to put it that way. And when I started learning, I recognized that you can always save. It's amazing that you always think that you'll get a windfall, and once you get a windfall, things will be okay. It is not so. I've seen where I was in a situation where my income doubled within a 12 months period, and I went further in debt. So I always say to person that you can always find means and ways to save. And while I was in my financial crisis and start learning the principles of finance, I started saving. Now, it might not be 10% or 20% as financial advisors would recommend, but habit is more important than, you know, getting it perfect at the start. So if you are able to put away $100 US per month, or or $50, start where you can, and develop the habit. You can find means and ways to cut cost. I remember I used to, love to go and have a drink. You can, reduce the number of drinks that you have. You're going to work, take a bottle of water with you. You can find ways to reduce your savings. However, as it relates to pre-COVID, for sure, most persons, well, a lot of persons were definitely living above their means before COVID came into being. The stability report for Bank of Jamaica, I think it's 2018 or 2019, showed that in Jamaica, about 54 cents out of every dollar for households were servicing debt in deposit taking institutions. Now, if you add microfinance institutions, so that it means it probably could be 70 cents out of the dollar. You know, that's massive. And most times when you talk to persons who are in that highly indebted, they also want to get another loan, to get themselves out of it. No. We have to take stock and we have to decide that, where we are and make real decisions about it. We have to now be disciplined to start getting ourselves out of debt. And we need to start saving right where we are right now by cutting costs somewhere. So that would be my response to the first part of the question. The second part of the question, Judy, may you just remind me of the second part of the question?
Right. The second part of the question is about people adjusting their money mindset to
Yes.
deal with what may lie ahead.
Yes. So from all indicators that we see now, there is a lot of uncertainty and there's nothing that is very clear or optimistic about us recovering in a significant way throughout 2021. And therefore, it means we'll be in this kind of financial hardship for some time. And therefore, people need to adjust their mindset to first and foremost begin where you have control. You have control over your spending. You have control over cutting costs. And just some basic ways to cut costs. Plug out your TV and your computers and so forth before you go on the road because it increases your light bill. Minimize on your water usage. So you have to start right there. Eat out less. Probably, stop going to high-end places to buy. So you have to find practical ways right now to cut cost. So that's the defensive side of the game in changing the mindset. The second component of the mindset change that I definitely recommend is that personal finance is not only about playing a defensive game, but you have to play offense also. So there, you should also find means and ways to boost your current income stream. And sometimes there are low-hanging fruits that you can look at. I use a very low-hanging fruit for my son. I loan him 10,000 Jamaican dollars, a 5-year-old, and he purchased grapes. In the first purchase he made, I got back my $10,000. He's making anywhere between $10,000 to $20,000 per month from that simple business. So we have to find ways of definitely preserving our financial position and also increasing it in this time.
So, one thing I've learned is that you cannot out earn your spending. So, no matter how much money you make, you will find a way to get rid of it. Always, always happens. And I really like the fact that you have your son on that entrepreneurial journey and teaching him money matters early because it's very, very important because most of um our financial mindset is formed very, very early. So if they get the right messages, then they will become better managers of their money as they go forward. So Jenny, from your standpoint, right? And I know that you manage staff and you're in the bank and all of that. Do you hear people saying that um I can't live and save at the same time, or I have more months than I have money? What has been your experience?
Well, I think it's the same, and sometimes we think that one experience in one country is different in another. But I'm pretty sure if you ask the same question to someone maybe in the US or someone in the UK, you may very well get the same response because at the end of the day, I think we are dealing with people. We're dealing with the very same things in life, no matter where you are. And so right here, we get the same responses from customers, from persons in our daily interactions. But Dwaine is right, because that is exactly where my mind is as well in terms of what advice will we give on this program. It has to start with the individual. and it is a habit. And so the issue here is consistency. I recall back in the days when I was involved in retail at the branch level, that was a very, very frequent comment you would get a lot. And I would say it is not the quantity. It is not waiting for the windfall. You can start with as little as you can shave off. And once you build the discipline and the habit, it grows on you. It really grows on you. I think the other thing as well is that persons have to understand that there are different avenues you can save. So the same example that Dwaine just gave with his son, the investment, you can save through a business idea, through an investment, and the return that you make from that investment, that is what you can employ into a savings account. Then I know people have a lot of fear still as it relates to insurances based on what happened a few years ago. We are all familiar with that story. But I mean, with proper research and with proper advice, there are still wonderful opportunities where you can save through insurance policies. I believe in that. It has worked for me. It has worked for other persons in my family, where you utilize various types of insurance policies to grow your savings as opposed to a traditional bank account. And so really and truly, it has to be an individual choice. It has to be your understanding of what saving is. Saving and having more is anything more than you had as of this moment. So if at this moment I have $1 and tomorrow morning I have $2, it means I have $1 more than the dollar that I had today. And so I now have that choice as to what I will use that $1 for. And Dwaine made a very important point, and I was reflecting a lot with friends that, COVID gave a lot of us the opportunity to stop, to pause, and to reassess how we spend our time. And with a lot of restrictions now on social activity, on entertainment, I think people have a wonderful opportunity where you certainly can have some excess money that you can start seriously considering to save or to invest into a business idea or even to develop. Because I think, if I recall, one of your guests on a previous show, Judy, I really liked her perspective. I'm not sure if it was Denise or another person, but it comes back to our interpretation of money. So money is not just about cash. Let us think of money as anything that makes you more abundant, that earns you anything more than you had. And so I think if we start adopting that kind of mindset in terms of having more and not just money or cash as we know it, how can we enrich our life? I think that is a way to go in 2021 in terms of enhancing our lives overall.
One thing that people can do also is, I gave this guy an assignment, and I said to him, everything that you spend on for 1 month, every single thing that you spend, if you buy a sweetie, a pack of gum, whatever it is, write it down. Write it down. You have a what you call it? Everybody have a smartphone, so just kind of put it in as you buy. And then I saw him a month after, and he said to me he did it with his wife, and they could not believe the amount of money that they were spending unnecessarily. So it is easier to increase your income by reducing your expenses. So one of the things people have to really do is pay attention to their spending, right? So Gayle, from your perspective, what do you think that people will have to do in terms, like, from a mindset standpoint?
I mean, in general, I think that people just need to be a little bit more realistic with what money they actually have. Budgeting is very important. I think exactly as you said, there are a lot of things that people don't even realize where their money goes and on some of the insignificant things that their money goes on. As Jennifer would also have mentioned, with the lockdown and other things during COVID, there would have been many things that people would have had no choice but to do without. So things like entertainment, going out, eating out, things like that. You had no choice but to do it though, because you weren't able to go to restaurants, you weren't able to go to the bars or go to parties. Those are some things that basically, if you're really interested in saving money, you can actually keep up. Even if you reduce the amount that you do, you reduce the amount of partying, reduce the amount of liming and so forth, that will actually cut down your budget significantly, and you will realize then how much money you can actually put aside. Also, another thing Jennifer would have mentioned is the fact that, more or less people found better ways to spend the time. So people had to find more creative ways to spend time with family, to interact with others, mostly using social media and other things. But the fact of the matter is, there are ways that you can do these things without actually having to spend any money. And that money that you're not spending can now go towards savings. If you actually plan properly as well, then what you can actually do is you can budget for your saving, so that it would be like if you have an expense. So that money that you would normally spend on those things, you put aside in a bucket called savings. And then that would also help you to actually get a start as to putting aside money, and you make it become a habit. But one thing that I just also wanted to mention as well is that what you could actually find happening is that sometimes what the government might do, and it's not anything that they're doing that's a bad thing, they actually try to provide assistance and so on, which will reduce the panic and also help to stimulate economic activity. Sometimes that in itself might actually make people a bit more comfortable than they should be in certain situations, and that is also a challenge that has to be faced. Because if the government is going to provide certain things for you, or if they're going to, make certain allowances on certain things, then you might not feel you need to save it for yourself. So it also has to be something that, as you said, you have to have the mindset to do it. And hopefully COVID was a good opportunity for people to realize how important it was, especially a lot of people losing their jobs and businesses closing and so on.
As one of our viewers, Roger, just said, we should treat our savings as an expense and really just put it in the expense bucket so it comes out. And I really believe if you don't see it, you really don't have it to spend. And people aren't thinking long term as it relates to money. But one of the things I believe about that is that um, it's a mindset issue. I think that that is a serious mindset issue, and I'll come to that in a bit. But I wanna talk about this new year, because every new year, um, everybody make a bunch of resolutions. A lot of people were just happy that 2020 is gone. Oh my gosh, all the things you see, everybody want to get rid of 2020. I think 2020 was a fabulous year, by the way. And we have a Caribbean tradition. I don't know if it's a tradition anywhere else, but I know in the Caribbean, we put ourselves in a lot of debt when it's Christmas. We buy everything new, new chair, new floor, new this, new that, even if it's not needed. I know that there are some people who save and wait until then to buy the new furniture, but generally people change. And when I ask, people say, well, it's what we do traditionally, it's our culture. Some cultures just need to be abandoned. But one of the things that I have seen in 2020, I've seen an accessory company grew from 5 million in revenue at the end of 2019 to 15 million in 2020. So obviously, it means that the pandemic has not curbed anybody. A lot of people spending. You're home, you want something to do, you're online, you have your credit card, and you just go ahead. I've seen people with 5 credit cards, and they just spend. But I think that for people to start to get a good handle on their money, they really need to take an honest look. And that's one of the things that it's difficult for people to do. Like take an honest look at how they behave with their money and set goals. They have to start to set goals um, to achieve the things that they wanted to achieve in 2021. So, my question to you is, what are some of the pitfalls of excessive spending and unnecessary debt that people could and should avoid with their money in 2021? And I'm going to ask Dwaine to answer that question to start.
Right. So some of the clear pitfalls of excessive spending. That one, sometimes you can't pursue some of the personal goals that you have, whether it's education, whether you want to acquire large assets like a home. You can't purchase those. Again, it's number one stressor in relationship, as you alluded to, Julie, that not having money is one of the reasons we have so many breakdown in marriages. We have we have people not getting children not getting the type of education they may really want. So there are many repercussions of not having your finances intact, and we can see this over and again, where sometimes persons are taken to court because they have credit cards that are out of control, not being able to meet their payment obligation. Many persons have also ruined their what do you call it, the financial, the reputation. So there are many repercussions for not having your finances intact. And in many cases, and this is what makes it really challenging, in many cases, the things that people spend money on, in many cases, they are not needed. I think it's Robert Kiyosaki that speaks to, assets being something that puts money in your pocket, and liability means something that takes it out. And you find that a lot of persons are spending money buying liabilities, things that are making them worse off, not contributing to their financial health. So that's a major problem in our society, and it's widespread. It's widespread. It's alarming that I looked at some stats about a year or 2 years ago, and it said that approximately 35% of the American population had less than 1,000 US dollars in savings. So right across the board, it's a major problem. People just love to spend, and in most cases, do not anticipate the consequences, when the health problems may come, or when our great opportunities may just, pass them. And just to give you a quick example, I remember, as I said, I was living in from paycheck to paycheck. And when I recognized and I made a dramatic change and over time be able to do some saving, there was an opportunity to acquire a piece of real estate, and I was able to buy it cash. No, I'm saying I worked almost a decade, earning a decent salary without any form of savings. In a case like that, if an opportunity would pass me, if it was not, for me to, recalibrate and change my pattern in my spending patterns. So
Um, you talk about the American stats, and a lot of people are like one medical emergency away from bankruptcy, and people aren't really cognizant of that until something happens, and you realize that so many fundraising efforts. And I mean, in Belize is a barbecue here. I see they do motorcades. I don't know what they do in the other islands, but really and truly, people really need to start to take stock. So, Gail, what can people do, or what should people do um, to avoid excessive spending and unnecessary debt in 2021?
I mean, in general, for me, I think it has a lot to do with priorities and what you consider to be important. For example, there are some people that go to party, and when they go to party, they have to buy something new, from getting their hair done, new outfit, new shoes, everything come down. A lot of times, those things are not that important. So it's more or less you kind of temper where you need to spend your money, what you consider important. Also, another thing which Dwayne would have mentioned, things like credit. For example, there are incidences where a lot of people kind of expect that money will come in, and basically they kind of hedge against that. So what they'll do is they'll say, all right, I can borrow $100 because I know I'm doing a job next week and I can get back the money. But basically, one thing that would have come out a lot in COVID is that you're not quite sure. And I think that is something that 2021 is also going to bring, at least in the initial stages. For example, in Barbados, we would have recently had a situation with COVID where we would have had some exposure. And basically, as a result, there were a lot of parties being canceled and that kind of thing. So, for example, for a DJ, for example, who knew that money was coming because he had a job, when his party gets canceled, if he had borrowed thinking that money is coming in, he's now in debt. So, like, in terms of your priorities, in terms of planning properly, I think that is something that will be very important in terms of reducing, the excessive spending and so on, but also look for ways to make additional money if possible. I saw somebody would have put a comment on the screen earlier, more or less saying that, people would have been doing other things during COVID, would have found a lot of extra talents and so on, which would have made some money. COVID was a good opportunity to obviously expose a lot of these extra skills, kind of maximize on that, make some additional money, and as much as possible put it towards savings. But, hopefully that should also help you to look at money with a little bit more respect.
Definitely. From a from your perspective, Jennifer, what are some of the things that people should really avoid?
Judy, let me just bring a different twist to the conversation a bit, if you will allow me on that question, right?
Go ahead.
Yeah, we have been focusing on what people should do and what has been happening. But I think another thing we really need to be honest about and have some conversations about is what has been happening in our parts over the last, I would say, 9 years or so. If we look at what's been happening in our own space here, Judy, maybe it's the same for Jamaica, I don't know, or Barbados. We've seen an increase in the aggression in the market in terms of loans, in terms of lenders making credit available to persons. We have seen an increase in payday lending, persons who can easily obtain a fast turnaround or an advance on a next paycheck, right? All of these things have become part of the norm, if I should put it that way, quote unquote. And over the last 9 years, what you have seen is a society that has been somewhat taught, quote unquote, that it is okay to borrow. There is availability of credit. Why should you not take advantage of it? The financial sector has been pushing the availability of credit to clients. You know that 20 years ago or 25 years ago, in my early days of lending, everything was according to convention. So a lot of the scripts that we still quote in terms of what should be your equity contribution, you spoke about the 10% rule in saving. We know, if we are honest with what is happening around us, that it is not just people to be blamed, but generally, the sector has been pushing more debt, take more risks. And again, because persons are not necessarily all financially savvy and have been properly educated on financial principles, most times you find that debt is incurred and a lot of it goes into consumption spending as opposed to an investment that will enhance your life or improve your longer term growth financially. So I think we have to treat with that particular issue over the next several years, because truth be told, when you look at the recent reports, World Bank in their January report, when you look at what is forecasted, we do not have easy days ahead. There is no recovery to pre-COVID levels anytime soon. And particularly in our parts where we know we have been tourism dependent, we see how people have been impacted here in Grenada. The reality is that as a sector, all parts of the sector really do have to come together and to somehow assist people in changing that mindset. So persons like you and others who have started programs to push financial education, I think the ante has to up, where financial education and teaching people how they can seriously use this period to make a turnaround. There has to be responsibility within the system in terms of assisting customers, in assisting the public during this particular time, right? So that said, in terms of what persons can do, Gayle and Dwaine would have touched on some very important points. Again, I believe COVID has presented a wonderful opportunity for all of us to reassess what we have been doing, how we spend our time, where we spend money. At the end of the day, I think when we think about mindset, when we think about breaking habits, we have to be honest as well. A lot of it is hinged to social pressures. A lot of people may feel, I can't stop doing this, or I have to continue doing this because, my friends are doing this. I'm going to be like the odd one here. I really cannot make that change. And we understand the societies we live in. So I think it has to start at the individual level, persons using COVID as an opportunity to say, I am making this change. So I'm not going to say you have an excuse, but you have COVID on your side. You have good reason why I will make certain changes, whereas pre-COVID, it may have been more difficult to do so. So that's step one. Step two, the same World Bank in their report, one of the critical points that they raised was that, and I think Gayle alluded to that earlier, is that people may get a sense of false hope with a lot of the stimulus money in circulation and think that, okay, things will be bright. The reality is that no free money is in circulation right now. So even with moratoriums, as you said earlier, Judy, it is not debt forgiveness, but rather you have debt accumulation happening both at the individual level, at the country level, at the business level. So the reality at the end of 2021, 2022, into 23, 24 is that we're going to have a buildup of debt in the entire system. And it's not going to be easy days ahead. And so with our spending, we now also have to think about our children, about what your retirement will look like. Because we could sit here, we could have a plan, each of us here right now, but we are also going to be impacted by what is happening around us in the economy. We will be impacted because already there are projections that certain goods, certain services prices will increase very early in the new year. So that is another reality. So you can have the best laid plans, but the fact of the matter is we will all be impacted. And so I think even in spending, if we can start thinking of the future and the reality that is before us, and we start thinking of our own children as well as to what is the probability that we will be able to give them a start or make an investment with them when they need it 5 years or 10 years from now, maybe even that kind of motivation will help people to manage, how they budget this year into next year. Because the reality is that overflow of money, if some are getting it now through stimulus, it is really short term. It is not long term. And so we have to think about all of that money and salary increases, those things, it is not going to be something that you can really hedge against to say that it will be days like pre-COVID, companies will be under strain. So even things like bonuses that people used to hedge against, the reality is in 2021, even if your company paid a bonus, because 2021, as I said, we did not feel the full effect yet of COVID. So there are lots of companies who would have boasted a profit. They were able to do some measure of profit sharing, but 2021 may not be that year. So I just want to say we have to really understand the reality, and I would beg of persons start reading. With COVID, more persons have spent more time at their computers or on their phones. So apart from gaming and social media, use some of that time to really educate yourself. I mean, there's tons of videos and material available on YouTube now. It's quite interactive. The same way you lie down gaming, half an hour, you can look at a few YouTube tutorials, a few YouTube videos in terms of financial wellness, tips for building your own creativity and your own skills. So I would encourage people, spend your time wisely, prioritize, use COVID as an opportunity to extract yourself from anything that pre-COVID was a little difficult to do. And you can use this time now to set new priorities. And fourthly, the issue of responsibility for financial education by lenders, by any other organization or entities that is involved in lending and consumer borrowing, etc.
In addition to the looking at the YouTube and so on, I would encourage people to look at this show every Thursday at
Exactly.
5 o'clock and look at every episode 7 times because it takes 7 impressions before things start to stick. So we're doing something because for me, I like Dwaine. I have had some pains, you know. You do things from society standpoint, what you see everybody doing, just like Jennifer you were alluding to. So, I remember moving from Belize to Grenada, I actually gave away 60 pairs of shoes still in the box, right? So it wasn't something because I made money, but as far as I made it, I spent it. So I rarely had like nothing, but I rarely had shoes and handbags and all that kind of stuff. So we really have to pay very close attention to the things that we spend our money on. Are we building wealth? Are we creating a legacy? These are the questions that we have to start to ask because as a society, as a group of people, well, legacy isn't something that we think about. It's not something that we think about at all. So I'm coming back to the mindset because for me, what helped me greatly was a change in mindset. But before I do that, a participant, a viewer had asked a question. He had asked, what about saving versus accelerated debt repayment? And for me, my perspective is you saving is important. Saving is important. So whether you have your debt to be repaid, saving should still be on the books. You still must be saving some money. You can't just put all your money towards debt repayment and you have no savings, because remember the magic of compounding. What do you Dwaine, how do you answer that viewer?
Right. In Jamaica, you would say, Judy, that you hit the nail on the head. So you're very correct. Compound interest is very important, but not only compound interest. If you fall to the ground and you have a cushion, there's an opportunity for you to go again. The thing is, if you have no savings and you meet on difficult times, then you are likely to be under more significant stress. So you always want to ensure that you have savings. And in fact, one of the things that I promote personally with persons, I said, most times why persons may try to invest even in an insurance and it doesn't work, or they may try to do other forms of investment and then they have to go and take it away, because usually they don't have what we call an emergency fund. So you want to ensure that you save, you have an emergency fund. Uh, if you can't build it up fast, to bring it to that 6 months to 12 months period, just start putting down something that at least if there is some difficult time that you fall on, you have something that you can really go to without just facing hardship.
One of the things, what a challenge that I thrown out to people like 2 weeks ago is saving $5. Just every $5 you get, save it. Or there's a next thing that I've started is saving $5 every week. So every week I add $5 to the week and so on. And when you do the calculation, at the end of the year, it's almost $7,000 in savings just by doing that $5 thing every single time. So I'm back to mindset, because this for me is the secret sauce, um to really help people with their personal finance. I truly believe that your money will always match your mindset. I believe that undisputedly. Because if you have a spending mindset, your wallet will match that exact mindset. No two ways about it. Right? So people, we know that your mindset is formed by between 10 and 12, your money mindset, from your environment, advertising on TV, all those things help to cement and reinforce your money mindset. And that in turn affects your attitude and behavioral choices as it relates to money. Right? Many people follow tradition, and as a race, we have had 400 years of being told that we're not good enough, we sons of slaves, we can't own, we can't this, we can't. But I think that it's about time we break that. So I know that we talk about mindset already, but I want to ask you, how important do you think it is for us to have the right money mindset going into 2021? And I'm going to start with Gail.
I think that that is actually the most important part in terms of the mindset. As you would have explained, if you have a spending mentality, then basically your wallet and your behavior is going to reflect that mindset. In general, I think it's also a matter of what you want. If you look to the future and you tell yourself you want something, you usually will work towards it. If you live very much in the present, if you have $10 in your hand now, you will find something to do with that. Honestly, if you look ahead and you say to yourself, well, you have certain goals or certain things that you want to achieve, then certain things will be easy to put in place because you know you have something to work towards. And as you would have mentioned earlier, things like saving is as easy as putting aside $5 periodically because it builds up. Once you plan it properly, you know exactly what you want. Then you can actually put the particular measures in place to make sure that you have those reserves in the event of an emergency, or that you have something that in case you want to build a home later. Jennifer would have mentioned things like retirement. What actually really impacted me some time ago was when they would have had a situation in the US, when I would have traveled from my vacation and I went overseas and saw people acting as security guards and stuff who really and truly were too old to be security guards. But when you actually think about it, they had to come out of retirement because their pensions and so forth would have fallen through. And that is an unfortunate situation. But if you plan it, then maybe you might be able to, manage any risks that might befall certain things happening, or things like inflation. Jennifer, again, would have mentioned prices rising and so forth. But these are all things that you can think about in terms of managing your mindset and being on point with those things. Education is also very important. The reality situation is when you think about things like investing in Barbados, I would say, is not really common conversation in terms of certain different types of products and things that you can do. These are things that seem to be concentrated in certain groups or certain professional fields. But really and truly, those are things that you should, if you don't know about it, you should at least try to get basic knowledge and understanding of things like insurance and other things that you can do to benefit yourself financially. Educate yourself, get a better idea, do some research, ask people who might know better than you, who might be able to explain it in terms, or if you have questions, provide you with the answers. But those are all things that you need to do to change your mindset and maybe get a better understanding of what you're risking right now by living very much in the moment, as opposed to planning forward to your future and maybe thinking about things that might make your life better in the meantime.
And don't ask your coworker in the cubicle next door about for investment advice. I'm just saying, don't. but Jennifer, you earlier you said that while it's a individual responsibility, yes, we have lending institutions who push, and we have seen the rise of payday loan companies. But I still believe that it's a real personal um choice that everybody must make. What do you think?
Well, Judy, I was not disputing that. I was just putting a whole different spin to the reality around us. But yes, mindset. And you are right. At the end of the day, it's a personal choice, and the personal decisions that one will make. Your view, your clarity about what type of future you would like to have, what type of future you would like your children to have. And I think if persons can step back and really start placing value on themselves as an individual who is worthy of anything or of worth, and you start setting goals towards that particular vision, that in itself will help you to want to live better, to work better. And I think, again, we need to appreciate some of the opportunities that have arisen from the whole pandemic and the lockdown. I'm not sure how much of us have observed that now on social media everywhere. There's quite a lot of programs that are now available virtually. And when you look at the cost sometimes of some of these programs that are now available, it's a fraction of what persons may have spent a year ago on training programs, on certain certificate programs. You are seeing programs now available for 49 US, certification programs for 100 US. And so, in terms of availability and affordability, while we spoke about loss of jobs and financial pressure, there is also opportunity where we can maximize spending on avenues that will upskill us, it will uptool us, it will make us more relevant. There's a lot of opportunity in terms of certain skill sets. With COVID, we now see an increase in the use of the internet in the banking sector itself. We've seen an increase in the use of electronic banking channels. So in terms of even opportunities for young people and us as working folk to upskill in new avenues where there will be demand, these are ways that we can increase our relevance and, of course, naturally increase your income streams. Because if you are upskilling and you understand ahead, there may be opportunities for this type of skill set, and you start preparing now, and then you, of course, are naturally making yourself available to earn more. I think one viewer would have also commented that during COVID, persons had a chance to really go back to some of their passions and their gifts and to fine tune those gifts. I'm not sure if you've observed, Judy, but here in Grenada, I mean, after COVID, I have seen such creativity, so many individuals making, arts and crafts and things, not just to generate income, but they have rediscovered things that they're good at that could earn them income. So again, in terms of mindset, I think just as in the Bible, there's a parable of the talents and how you use it and how you multiply it. I think as an individual, this is a good time to reassess what we're good at, what we can become better at, and that in and of itself could help earn you more money so that you could increase your income, increase your savings, increase your worth over time.
Definitely. And We have Mr. Dwaine.
Right. So what I would say to viewers is that we're not going back. So we are moving full speed ahead into what we call the gig economy. So as Jennifer, you alluded to, uh, it's a great opportunity for persons to develop new skills so they can access and harness the new opportunities that will be presented. So that has to be a part of the mindset shift where we have to recognize that there is a change in our society, and in order to really benefit, we also have to change, develop new skills. I would also say individuals should look at their financial life now as it is and ask themselves the question, are you satisfied with how you are living financially? And if the answer is no, it simply means that the mindset that got you on that path will not get you on the path that you're supposed to be. So therefore, it has to be a shift. And a part of the shift is that you have to be prepared to become uncomfortable. You have to be prepared for people to ridicule or say things about you. I remembered when I was making my shift, I used to drive a lovely Grand Vitara uh, Jeep, and I sold that, scaled down, and bought a regular car. There are many people ask me many questions, and I had to say, well, circumstances change. So you have to be prepared to make those tough decisions, get yourself on a path to financial success if you are serious about it. And I want to emphasize if you're serious, because talking will not help. It is the actions that you will take that will help you. And the final thing I'd want to say, it's a great time for investment. When the economy is bad, it's a good time to start looking for opportunities to invest, whether in the stock market or other places, because you get the true value and now you buy and hold until the market rebound. Of course, you will require, if you don't have the knowledge, what I would say, one, you have to start doing some education for yourself. Because one of the things that I have proven when I start learning and studying, there are many things that I would expect some financial advisors to know, and they don't. So you really want to ensure that you educate yourself so you can at least ask the right questions. One opportunity that you have, though, that you can maximize as you learn about the financial sector, you can go to different institutions and ask similar questions of financial advisors and compare the responses and see what evidence support their responses. So you want to maximize these opportunities that are available in the crisis. The Chinese says crisis mean danger plus opportunity. So always look for the opportunities that exist. And remember, take this opportunity to try and also increase your earning potential as you try to manage the thing that you have immediate control over, which is to reduce costs or expenses.
So we can't solve the problem at the same level. We can't find the solution at the same level that the problem was created. It's like Einstein said, you can't keep doing the same things over and over and expecting change. That is absolute madness. And I just want to say, as we wrap up, that our mindset affects our attitudes and our behaviors towards money. It really does. Have you ever had someone in the bank, right? That you really it's just there. Like maybe you didn't have to pay something, or whatever. And it's just itching you. But it's just itching you. It's like it burning a hole in your pocket. You want to spend it. That is just a matter of your mindset. It affects your attitude towards money. And our mindset gets enforced by our environment, our peers, our parents, our guardians, and generational influences. And we have to remember that advertising, and of course, as always, our financial education. So I would, just like our guest said, take the time to learn about money. Take the time to learn about your money. Jennifer said you could do YouTube, you can do all of that. There's loads of articles on the internet about money, and follow the show. Follow the show. The recordings are on. You can keep looking at it. Keep looking at it, because today we had, for all the shows, we've had some really lovely gems, some real um things that you can implement immediately so that you can start helping yourself going forward. So I want to encourage you to join me in January for the Money Mindset Detox mini course. And remember, it's all about helping you to build wealth from the inside out. And to get on the wait list, click the link at the bottom. So I want to say thank you to our guest today. I know that I love this, and I really like this conversation, because it people could actually just leave and go away. Um, I have to stop in the middle here, because a question was just asked if we can do a session on the advantages and disadvantages of credit or loans. I guess the person is talking about loans. So all right, I'm going to I'm going to put that into one of the shows. Next week, on next week's show, we'll be talking about savings, budgeting, debt consolidation, and that same question that the viewer asked about um savings and accelerated debt repayment. So I encourage you to join us next week. Is there any last tips that you want to give to our viewers before we say goodnight? Jennifer?
Well, Judy, I think I will steal your little gem. Money will match your mindset. I like that. I have made a note, I've gone away with that. And again, I just want to encourage persons to use this time where there is less happening around to distract us, to really focus on self, how you can upskill, uptool, make yourself more marketable, and that in return will assist you to earn new sources of income or to boost your existing income. So thanks again, Judy, for having me on the show. Thank you, Gayle. Thank you, Dwaine. And thank you to the audience. I pretty much enjoyed the conversation. And I also learned quite a few tips as well. Nothing new, but iterations and a few gems, as you say, to take away.
Dwayne, I'm putting you in the middle of the two ladies.
All right, thank you very much, Judy. What I will say is that many of the behaviors that exhibit by persons around their finance, it's much deeper than basic habits. Some of the psychologists have now referred to what they call money scripts and money disorders, which are certain behaviors. So we'll encourage persons not to just stay if they're struggling and you're trying and it's not working. You may really need to speak to a specialist about your behavioral patterns, because these things are realities. So that's one. Two, I would say fundamental rule of personal finance is that you must spend less than you earn. If you spend less than you earn, you will not be in any financial problems. And two, three, I would say whatever you save, put it to work for you. And I'll leave it there for this time.
Thank you, Gail.
Yes, Judy, I just want to take this opportunity to encourage everybody to sign on to more shows just like this one. This series is a really good opportunity to learn not only about how to spend your money, but it's also a good way to get a Caribbean perspective. A lot of times you're exposed to things that might be more prevalent in the US situation, information on things like that. But basically, this information is good because you get an idea of how the actual Caribbean countries are able to do things and some of the perspectives of what is going on. So, as much as possible, log on to more of these types of sessions, any that you can find, and just educate yourself as much as possible. As Dwaine would have said, make sure you earn more than you spend, and shows like this will help you to learn to spend it wisely and how to save it and to make more money for you as well going forward.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you to our guests. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I am your host, Judy McCutcheon. Thank you for joining us today. And I wish you love, joy, and everything that's good and pure for 2021. Please stay safe and follow the physical distancing protocols. No parties. It's going to cause the spread. Thank you very much. See you next week.